Good day, dear students. Welcome back to our Introduction to the Philosophy of the Human Person class. Introduction to the Philosophy of the Human Person, second quarter, Module 5, The Freedom of the Human Person. At the end of this module, you are expected to convince and understand that all actions have consequences. Second, evaluate the use of freedom of one's self. And third, give examples regarding the use of freedom and its consequences. What is freedom? How do you practice your freedom? Let us find out what are the different kinds of freedom and the real essence of it. The freedom of the human person. Freedom is an intrinsic and essential property of a person. This means that the human person by nature is a free being, and it is his nature to seek for freedom. The ability to make decisions and perform certain actions according to a situation is an important indication of human freedom. Freedom is also understood as the power to be what you want to be and the ability to decide for your own being. Physical attributes and temperaments are some of our inherent traits, but some of the characteristics that define our personality are often a product of self-made decisions. Freedom gives the ability to strive and enable to achieve a set of goals, while the nature of a human person gives the ability to imagine what is his future. Freedom is rooted in the human person's self-determination and the exercise of intellect and free will. This implies that every actions of a human person are freely determined by his actions, define who he is. The nature of determination is that the future of a person can be determined according to what he takes place. Imagine that you are one of those people who saw the scenario. Which among the situations illustrated below will be your truthful reaction? The pictures presented three possible reactions. You may choose not to help the old lady and just watch or ignore while she picks up her grocery items. You may also choose to help him pick up her grocery items, or you may laugh at her and refuse to help. Freedom gives us the choice to undertake possible actions on certain circumstances. The essence of freedom does not confine by the expectations of others. We can perform new actions and decide to undertake them. It requires a degree of control from the person who practices it. A person becomes more free when he practices control over himself, while a person who is less free when he is no longer in control of himself and controlled by other forces in his environment. We have three kinds of freedom. The first one is the physical freedom. This refers to the absence of any physical restraint. The person has the freedom of mobility to go where he wants to go. He is not hindered by his actions or any physical force. Consented that the person has his limitations, physical freedom allows him to act or perform in a determined manner. You cannot be everywhere at once, but your freedom permits you to move from one place to another and go to wherever you want to go. Second, psychological freedom. Psychological freedom is also known as the freedom of choice. The person is free to make actions that he considers right and wise. A person is free to act or not to act. Psychological freedom is innate and cannot be denied by a person. No outside force or influence can urge to take action against his will. Third, moral freedom. Moral freedom refers to using freedom in a manner that upholds dignity and goodness. Freedom is not an object that a person may use in whatever way he pleases. A person must use his freedom to grow as a person. A person becomes more free when he uses freedom well, but becomes less free when he uses it in a bad way. Humans have a natural inclination for what is true and good. And when a person uses his freedom to do acts that violate human dignity and goodness, he dehumanizes himself and effectively negates human freedom. What makes us free? What does freedom shape our experiences? There are two elements that define freedom. The first element is voluntariness, refers to the ability of a person to act out of his own free will and self-determination. This means that a person may decide to act or not to act, and these decisions are made out of his own free will. It means that a person may act even he is not required to take any action. Whenever we decided to take action, this results in a certain consequence. All human actions have consequences, and this affects not only the person who commits the action, but also other people in our surroundings. As a free being, the person must accept the consequences of his actions and take full responsibility. The second element of freedom is responsibility. This refers to a person being accountable for his actions and consequences. Taking responsibility can either mean a person voluntarily taking responsibility of her own actions or being held responsible by other people. Whenever you know you're committed a bad action, you can either voluntarily confess to it or other people will point it out and hold you responsible. Responsibility can also have a positive or negative meaning, and it goes hand in hand with voluntariness in determining the morality of an action. Voluntariness and responsibility go hand in hand in determining a person's freedom. In any situation where a person is forced to do an action against his or her will, it follows that he or she cannot be held responsible for his or her involuntary actions. A person who is forced by bank robbers to open the safety vault in a bank may not be held fully responsible for the crime of robbery, since he or she acted without much voluntariness. On the other hand, a person who had no awareness of the effects of his or her actions can be considered as acting with diminished freedom. One example may be a person who tried to scare his or her friend by jumping out of a corner wearing a scary mask. The surprised friend decided to run away, but in his or her panic, he or she did not fully consider the consequences of his or her actions. Without these two elements, human freedom is diminished, and the person who makes imperfect actions and unwise decisions, which may have negative effects on the self and others. The realization of voluntariness and responsibility in the exercise of our freedom gives our actions and experiences a whole new meaning. We can now reflect on our actions to better understand them and guide us toward making the best possible decision. We can therefore begin our actions, habits, and behaviors by asking ourselves the following questions. Think, what should I do? Why should I do it? What will happen if I do it? How will my actions or behavior affect myself, others, and my surroundings? Will my actions or behavior be considered correct, proper, beneficial, and moral? Try to reflect on the questions as we go deeper with the concept of freedom of the human person. Don't try to put yourself in a compromise if you are not fully decided on the course of action that you will take, because in the end, you are the accountable. There are so many possibilities. that will test your free choice and self-determination. What should I do during the COVID-19 crisis? For example, you are instructed to follow the curfew hours of your barangay to manage the spread of the coronavirus. Why should I do it? Not only to control the spread of the coronavirus, but also to maintain the orderliness of your barangay. If you will follow the rules being imposed by your local government official, you will become a role model to your colleagues, and they will imitate you as a law-abiding citizen in your community. This can reflect your behavior. As a moral person, we are free agents to perform correct actions and ethical uprightness according to the standards of the society. Remember that your actions will be put on the process of validation through the barometer of your community. Morality, spirituality, goodness, virtue, and wisdom are the values that we must take to consider before we make actions and choices, special and big decisions. Freedom is a right that every individual deserves. However, it has to be used in a rightful and wise way. Freedom should also be exercised with regard for knowledge and truth. As rational beings, it is natural for us to think before we act. We use our freedom to act and acquire more knowledge, and we use this knowledge in order to come up with the decisions and courses of actions when confronted with difficult situations. To correctly answer a multiple choice item in an exam, a student should study and prepare beforehand to know the correct information needed to answer the test. Otherwise, he or she will be unable to answer the test correctly. The ability to acquire information and truthful knowledge regarding a particular situation is very important, since it aids us in making wise and informed choices. As human persons, our nature drives us to uphold human dignity and goodness. In exercising our freedom, we should also recognize and uphold not only our individual freedom, but also the freedom of others. This view has led to the assertion that freedom is a recognized and guaranteed right for all persons. Many societies identified certain freedoms that should be enjoyed by all, as these contribute to the quality of life of the individual and the welfare of society. These include the freedom to live and determine one's identity, freedom from slavery and other constraints, freedom of speech and freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Freedom should be exercised with due regard for the welfare of other persons, and one's freedom should be exercised not as a tool to restrict the freedom of others, but as a means to enable others to fully enjoy their own freedom. Happy learning, everyone! Thank you for listening. See you!